Horror fiction. 42 languages. Count Dracula, a vampire who emigrates from Transylvania to England and preys upon the blood of living victims in the poster of Dracula, 1931. This article is about the genre. For the film genre, see horror film. Horror story redirects here. For other uses, see horror story, disambiguation. Supernatural horror redirects here. For the film genre, see supernatural horror film. Horror is a genre of speculative fiction that is intended to disturb, frighten, or scare. 1. Horror is often divided into the sub-genres of psychological horror and supernatural horror, which are in the realm of speculative fiction. Literary historian J.A. Cudden, in 1984, defined the horror story as a piece of fiction in prose of variable length, which shocks, or even frightens the reader, or perhaps induces a feeling of repulsion or loathing. 2. Horror intends to create an eerie and frightening atmosphere for the reader. Often the central menace of a work of horror fiction can be interpreted as a metaphor for larger fears of a society. History, edit. Before 1000, edit. The horror genre has ancient origins, with roots in folklore and religious traditions focusing on death, the afterlife, evil, the demonic, and the principle of the thing embodied in the person. 3. These manifested in stories of beings such as demons, witches, vampires, werewolves, and ghosts. European horror fiction became established through works of the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans. 4. Mary Shelley's well-known 1818 novel about Frankenstein was greatly influenced by the story of Hippolytus, whom Asclepius revives from death. 5. Euripides wrote plays based on the story Hippolytos Calyptomenos and Hippolytus. 6. In Plutarch's The Lives of the Noble Grecians and Romans, in the account of Cimon, the author describes the spirit of a murderer, Damon, who himself was murdered in a bathhouse in Chaeronea. 7. Pliny the Younger, 61 to c. 113, tells the tale of Athenodorus, Canaanites, who bought a haunted house in Athens. Athenodorus was cautious since the house. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. An illustration of Andrew Lang's Athenodorus confronts the spectre. Vlad the Impaler, the inspiration for Count Dracula. Horace Walpole wrote the first Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto, 1764. Seemed inexpensive. While writing a book on philosophy, he was visited by a ghostly figure bound in chains. The figure disappeared in the courtyard. The following day, the magistrates dug in the courtyard and found an unmarked grave. 8. Elements of the horror genre also occur in biblical texts, notably in the Book of Revelation. 9, 10. After 1000, edit. The Witch of Berkeley by William of Malmesbury has been viewed as an early horror story. 11. Werewolf stories were popular in medieval French literature. One of Marie de France's 12 Lays is a werewolf story titled Bisclavet. The Countess Yolande commissioned a werewolf story titled Guillaume de Palerme. Anonymous writers penned 2 werewolf stories, by Clairel and Malayan. Much horror fiction derives from the cruelest personages of the 15th century. Dracula can be traced to the Prince of Wallachia Vlad III, whose alleged war crimes were published in German pamphlets. A 1499 pamphlet was published by Marcus Arer, which is most notable for its woodcut imagery. 12. The alleged serial killer sprees of Gilsder Ray have been seen as the inspiration for Bluebeard. 13. The motif of the vampiress is most notably derived from the real-life noblewoman and murderer, Elizabeth Bathory, and helped usher in the emergence of horror fiction in the 18th century, such as through Laszlo Turk's 1729 book Tragica Historia. 14. 18th century, edit. The 18th century saw the gradual development of Romanticism and the Gothic horror genre. It drew on the written and material heritage of the late Middle Ages, finding its form with Horace Walpole's seminal and controversial 1764 novel, The Castle of Otranto. In fact, the first edition was published disguised as an actual medieval romance from Italy, discovered and republished by a fictitious translator. 15. Once revealed as modern, many found it anachronistic, reactionary, or simply in poor taste, but it proved immediately popular. 15. Otranto. Inspired Vathook, 1786, by William Beckford, a Sicilian romance. 1790, The Mysteries of Udolpho, 1794, The Italian, 1796, by Anne Radcliffe, and The Monk, 1797, by Matthew Lewis. 15. A significant Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Initiating a new literary genre. 15. Mary Shelley by Richard Rothwell, 1840. 41. Amount of horror fiction of this era was written by women and marketed towards a female audience, a typical scenario of the novels being a resourceful female menaced in a gloomy castle. 16. 19th century, edit. The Gothic tradition blossomed into the genre that modern readers today call horror literature in the 19th century. Influential works and characters that continue resonating in fiction and film today saw their genesis in the Brothers Grimm's Hansel and Gretel, 1812, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, 1818, John Polidori's The Vampire, 1819, Charles Maturin's Melmoth the Wanderer, 1820, Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, 1820, Jane C. Loudon's The Mummy, or A Tale of the 22nd Century, 1827, Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1831, Thomas Peckett Prest's Vonnie the Vampire, 1847, the works of Edgar Allan Poe, the works of Sheridan Le Fanu, Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1886, Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, 1890, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Lot No. 249, 1892, H. G. Wells' The Invisible Man, 1897, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1897. Each of these works created an enduring icon of horror seen in later reimaginings on the page, stage, and screen. 17. 20th century, edit. A proliferation of cheap periodicals around the turn of the century led to a boom in horror writing. For example, Gaston Leroux's serialized his Le Fantôme de l'Opéra before it became a novel in 1910. One writer who specialized in horror fiction for mainstream pulps, such as All Story magazine, was Todd Robbins, whose fiction deals with themes of madness and cruelty. 1819, in Russia, the writer Alexander Belyaev popularized these themes in his story Professor Dowell's Head, 1925, in which a mad doctor performs experimental head transplants and reanimations on bodies stolen from the morgue, and which was first published as a magazine serial before being turned into a novel. Later, specialist publications emerged to give horror writers an outlet, prominent among them was Weird Tales, 20, and Unknown Worlds. 21. Influential horror writers of the early 20th century made inroads in these mediums. Particularly, the venerated horror author H.P. Lovecraft, and his enduring Cthulhu mythos transformed and popularized the genre of cosmic horror, and M.R. James is credited with redefining the ghost story in that era. 22. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. H.P. Lovecraft in 1915. Stephen King. The serial murderer became a recurring theme. Yellow journalism and sensationalism of various murderers, such as Jack the Ripper, and lesser so, Kyle Panzram, Fritz Hamann, and Albert Fish, all perpetuated this phenomenon. The trend continued in the post-war era, partly renewed after the murders committed by Ed Gein. In 1959, Robert Bloch, inspired by the murders, wrote Psycho. The crimes committed in 1969 by the Manson family influenced the slasher theme in horror fiction of the 1970s. In 1981, Thomas Harris wrote Red Dragon, introducing Dr. Hannibal Lecter. In 1988, the sequel to that novel, The Silence of the Lambs, was published. Early cinema was inspired by many aspects of horror literature, and started a strong tradition of horror films and subgenres that continues to this day. Up until the graphic depictions of violence and gore on the screen commonly associated with 1960s and 1970s slasher films and splatter films, comic books such as those published by EC Comics, most notably Tales from the Crypt, in the 1950s satisfied readers' quests for horror imagery that the silver screen could not provide. 23. This imagery made these comics controversial, and as a consequence, they were frequently censored. 24. 25. The modern zombie tale dealing with the motif of the living dead harks back to works including H.P. Lovecraft's stories Cool Air, 1925, In the Vault, 1926, and The Outsider, 1926, and Dennis Wheatley's Strange Conflict, 1941. Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, 1954, influenced an entire genre of apocalyptic zombie fiction emblematized by the films of George Romero. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the enormous commercial success of 3 books, Rosemary's Baby, 1967, by I.A. Levy, The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, and the other by Thomas Tryon, encouraged publishers to begin releasing numerous other horror novels, thus creating a horror boom. 26, 27. One of the best-known late 20th century horror writers is Stephen King, known for Carrie, The Shining, It, Misery, and several dozen other novels and about 200 short stories. 28, 29, 30, beginning in the 1970s, King's stories have attracted a large audience, for which he was awarded by the U.S. National Book Foundation in 2003. 31. Other popular horror authors of the period included Anne Rice, Sean Hudson, Brian Lumley, Graham Masterton, James Herbert, Dean Koontz, Richard Lehman, Clive Barker, 32, Ramsey Campbell, 33, and Peter Straub. 21st Century, edit. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Samael sits enrobed with scythe in hand on top of the world. An illustration of Post the Raven by Gustave Doré, 1884. Best-selling book series of contemporary times exist in genres related to horror fiction, such as the werewolf fiction urban fantasy Kitty Norville books by Carrie Vaughan, 2005 onward. Horror elements continue to expand outside the genre. The alternate history of more traditional historical horror in Dan Simmons's 2007 novel The Terror sits on bookstore shelves next to genre mashups such as Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, 2009, and historical fantasy and horror comics such as Hellblazer, 1993 onward, and Mike Mignola's Hellboy, 1993 onward. Horror also serves as one of the central genres in more complex modern works such as Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves. 2000, a finalist for the National Book Award. There are many horror novels for children and teens, such as R. L. Stein's Goosebumps series or The Monstrumologist by Rick Yancey. Additionally, many movies for young audiences, particularly animated ones, use horror aesthetics and conventions, for example, Paranorman. These are what can be collectively referred to as children's horror. 34. Although it is unknown for sure why children enjoy these movies, as it seems counterintuitive, it is theorized that it is, in part, grotesque monsters that fascinate kids. 34. Tangential to this, the internalized impact of horror television programs and films on children is rather under-researched, especially when compared to the research done on the similar subject of violence in TV and films' impact on the young mind. What little research there is tends to be inconclusive on the impact that viewing such media has. 35. Characteristics, edit. One defining trait of the horror genre is that it provokes an emotional, psychological, or physical response within readers that causes them to react with fear. One of H.P. Lovecraft's most famous quotes about the genre is that, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." 36. The first sentence from his seminal essay, Supernatural Horror in Literature. Science fiction historian Darrell Schweitzer has stated, in the simplest sense, a horror story is one that scares us, and the true horror story requires a sense of evil, not necessarily in a theological sense, but the menaces must be truly menacing, life-destroying, and antithetical to happiness. 37. In her essay Elements of Aversion, Elizabeth Barrett articulates the need by some for horror tales in a modern world. The old fight-or-flight reaction of our evolutionary Heritage once played a major role in the life of every human. Our ancestors lived and died by it. Then, explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Someone invented the fascinating game of civilization, and development pushed wilderness back from settled lands. Social violence came with civilization and humans started PR. And large daily life calmed down. We began to feel restless. Excitement of living on the edge, the tension between other stories through the long, dark nights. When the fires scare the daylights out of each other. The rush of adrenaline. Our breath quickens, and we can imagine ourselves on the insightful aspects of horror. Sometimes a story intends to. Best horror intends to rattle our cages and shake us out of forces us to confront ideas we might rather ignore, and all kinds. Horror reminds us that the world is not always as exercises our mental muscles and reminds us to keep a little hand. 38. In a sense similar to the reason a person seeks out the controlled thrill of a roller coaster, readers in the modern era seek out feelings of horror and terror to feel a sense of excitement. However, Barrett adds that horror fiction is one of the few mediums where readers seek out a form of art that forces themselves to confront ideas and images they might rather ignore to challenge preconceptions of all kinds. One can see the confrontation of ideas that readers and characters would rather ignore. Throughout literature in famous moments such as Hamlet's musings about the skull of Yorick, its implications of the mortality of humanity, and the gruesome end that bodies inevitably come to. In horror fiction, the confrontation with the gruesome is often a metaphor for the problems facing the current generation of the author. There are many theories as to why people enjoy being scared. For example, people who like horror films are more likely to score highly for openness to experience, a personality trait linked to intellect and imagination. 39. It is a now commonly accepted view that the horror elements of Dracula's portrayal of vampirism are metaphors for sexuality in a repressed Victorian era. 40. But this is merely one of many interpretations of the metaphor of Dracula. Jack Halberstam postulates many of these in his essay Technologies of Monstrosity, Bram Stoker's Dracula. He writes, the image of dusty and unused gold, coins from many nations and old unworn jewels, immediately connects Dracula to the old money of a corrupt class, to a kind of piracy of nations and to the worst excesses of the aristocracy. 41. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Illustration from an 1882 issue of Punch. An English editorial cartoonist conceives the Irish Fenian movement as akin to Frankenstein's monster, in the wake of the Phoenix. Park killings, menacing villains and monsters in horror literature can often be seen as metaphors for the fears incarnate of a society. Halberstam articulates a view of Dracula as manifesting the growing perception of the aristocracy as an evil and outdated notion to be defeated. The depiction of a multinational band of protagonists using the latest technologies, such as a telegraph, to quickly share, collate, and act upon new information is what leads to the destruction of the vampire. This is one of many interpretations of the metaphor of only one central figure of the canon of horror fiction, as over a dozen possible metaphors are referenced in the analysis, from the religious to the antisemitic. 42. Noel Carroll's philosophy of horror postulates that a modern piece of horror fiction's monster, villain, or a more inclusive menace must exhibit the following two traits. A menace that is threatening, either physically, psychologically, socially, morally, spiritually, or some combination of the aforementioned. A menace that is impure, that violates the generally accepted schemes of cultural categorization. We consider impure that which is categorically contradictory. 43. Scholarship and criticism, edit. In addition to those essays and articles shown above, scholarship on horror fiction is almost as old as horror fiction itself. In 1826, the Gothic novelist Ernest Radcliffe published an essay distinguishing two elements of horror fiction, terror and horror. Whereas terror is a feeling of dread that takes place before an event happens, horror is a feeling of revulsion or disgust after an event has happened. 44. Radcliffe describes terror as that which expands the soul and awakens the faculties to a high degree of life, whereas horror is described as that which freezes and nearly annihilates them. Modern scholarship on horror fiction draws upon a range of sources. In their historical studies of the Gothic novel, both Devendra Varma, 45, and S. L. Varnado, 46, make reference to the theologian Rudolf Otto, whose concept of the numinous was originally used to describe religious experience. A recent survey reports how often horror media is consumed. To assess frequency of horror consumption, we asked respondents the following question. In the past year, about how often have you used horror media, for example, horror literature, film, and video games, for entertainment? 11.3% said never, 7.5% once, 28.9% several times, 14.1% once a month, 20.8% several times a month, 7.3% once a week, and 10.2% several times a week. Evidently, then, most respondents explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 81.3% claimed to use horror media several times a year or more often. Unsurprisingly, there is a strong correlation between liking and frequency of use, R equals .79, p.0001. 47. Awards and associations, edit. Achievements in horror fiction are recognized by numerous awards. The Horror Writers Association presents the Bram Stoker Awards for Superior Achievement, named in honor of Bram Stoker, author of the seminal horror novel Dracula. 48. The Australian Horror Writers Association presents annual Australian Shadows Awards. The International Horror Guild Award was presented annually to works of horror and dark fantasy from 1995 to 2008. 49. 50. The Shirley Jackson Awards are literary awards for outstanding achievement in the literature of psychological suspense, horror, and the dark fantastic works. Other important awards for horror literature are included as subcategories within general awards for fantasy and science fiction, in such awards as the Ori Alice Award. Alternative terms, edit. Some writers of fiction normally classified as horror tend to dislike the term, considering it too lurid. they instead use the terms dark fantasy or gothic fantasy for supernatural horror, 51, or psychological thriller for non-supernatural horror. 52. See also, edit. Related genres: Christmas horror, crime fiction, dark fantasy, death metal, ghost stories, gothic fiction, monster literature, mystery fiction, speculative fiction, thriller, weird fiction, analog horror, space horror, history of horror films, horror convention. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Horror film, horror podcast, LGBTQ themes in horror fiction, list of ghost films, list of horror fiction writers, list of horror podcasts, list of horror television programs. References, edit. 1 Carroll, Noel, 1990. The Philosophy of Horror or Paradoxes of the Heart. New York, NY, Routledge. pp. 28, 36, 53. ISBN 0-415-90145-6. Art horror requires evaluation both in terms of threat and disgust. Some emotional states are the cognitive evaluative sort. And, of course, I would hold that art horror is one of these. The audience's psychological state, therefore, diverges from the psychological state of characters in respect of belief, but converges on that of characters with respect to the way in which the properties of said monsters are emotively assessed. 2 Cudden, J. 1984. Introduction. The Penguin Book of Horror Stories. Harmondsworth, Penguin. p. 11. ISBN 0-14-006799-X. 3 Jackson, Rosemary, 1981. Fantasy, The Literature of Subversion. London, Methuen. pp. 53-5, 68. 9. 4 Even ancient Greeks and Romans enjoyed good scary stories, Professor says. phys.org. Archived from the original on 13 October 2020. Retrieved 2 September 2020. 5 Though the subtitle of Frankenstein references the Titan Prometheus, none of the ancient myths about Prometheus is itself a horror tale. 6 Edward P. Coleridge, 1891, prose, full text archived 12 April 2006 at the Wayback Machine. 7 John Dryden, 1683, full text archived 12 June 2018 at the Wayback Machine. 8 Pliny the Younger, 1909-14. LXXXIII. Tusura. In Charles W. Eliot. Letters, by Pliny the Younger. Translated by William Melmoth, revised by F.C.T. Bosanquet. The Harvard Classics. 9. New York, P.F. Collier and Son. 9 Beale, Timothy, the 23rd of October 2018. Left Behind Again, The Rise and Fall of Evangelical Rapture. Horror Culture. The Book of Revelation, a Biography. Lives of Great Religious Books. Princeton. Princeton University Press, published 2018. p. 197. ISBN 9780691145839. Retrieved 9 April 2021. taken together with the rapture and tribulation themes in evangelical apocalyptic horror movies. This zombie connection testifies to the variety of ways that Revelation feeds into deep, largely repressed correspondences between religion and horror in contemporary culture. 10 Pippin, Tina, 1992. Death and Desire, The Rhetoric of Gender in the Apocalypse of John. Whipfand. Stock Publishers, published 2021. p. 105. ISBN 9781725294189. Retrieved 9 April 2021. If these books were arranged in a bookstore, one would find all the women writers under science fiction. The Apocalypse, on the other hand, would be found under horror literature. 11 Livermore, c. 2021. When the Dead Rise, Narratives of the Revenant, from the Middle Ages to the Present Day. D.S. Brewer. p. 43. ISBN 978-1-84384-576-8. Archived from the original on 1 June 2023. Retrieved 1 June 2023. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 12 Raymond T. McNally and Raju Florescu, 1972. In Search of Dracula. Houghton Milton. Pages 8-9. 13 Kiernan, Dr. Jazz. G. Sexual Perversion, and the Whitechapel Murders. The Medical Standard, 4.5. G. P. Engelard and Company, Chicago. 14 in Ungaria Suez cum Regibus Compendia Data, Typis Academicis Soc. G. Superfriedera cum Gaul. Anno. Mx 6 Mens Septembri die 8. p. 188-193, quoted by Ferran. 15 ABCD The Castle of Otranto, the creepy tale that launched Gothic fiction, archived 3 July 2019. At the Wayback Machine. BBC. Retrieved 15 July 2017. 16 Richard Davenport Hines, 1998. Gothic, 1500 Years of Excess, Horror, Evil and Ruin. London. Fourth Estate. 17 Christopher Frayling, 1996. Nightmare, The Birth of Horror. London, BBC Books. 18 Brian Stableford, Robbins, Todd, in David Pringle, ed., St. James Guide to Horror, Ghost and Gothic. Writers, London, St. James Press, 1998, ISBN 1558622063, pp 481. 19 Lee Server. Encyclopedia of Pulp Fiction Writers. New York, Facts on File, 2002. ISBN 978-0-8160. 4578-5, pp 223224. 20 Robert Weinberg, Weird Tales in M.BTYMN and Mike Ashley, Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Weird Fiction Magazines. Westport, C.T., Greenwood, 1985. ISBN 0-313-21221-X, pp 727736. 21 Unknown. In, M.B. TYMN and Mike Ashley, Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Weird Fiction Magazines. Westport, Greenwood, 1985. pp.694-698. ISBN 0-313-21221-X. 22 Medieval Studies and the Ghost Stories of M.R. James by Patrick J. Murphy. www.psupress.org. Archived from the original on 17 March 2020. Retrieved 17 March 2020. 23 Hutchings, Peter, 2008. The A to Z of Horror Cinema. The A to Z Guide Series. Volume 100. Lanham. M.D., The Scarecrow Press, Inc. p. 72. ISBN 978-0-8108-6887-8. Retrieved 29 October 2015. 24 Collins, Max Allen, 28 February 2013. 11 Most Controversial Comic Books Archived 18. December 2018 at the Wayback Machine. HuffPost. Retrieved 5 February 2019. 25 Hansen, Kelly, 1 October 2012. Banned Books Week, Comics and Controversy Archived 7. February 2019 at the Wayback Machine. University of Missouri. Retrieved 5 February 2019. 26 I.A. Levin's Rosemary's Baby, 1967, Thomas Tyrons The Other, 1971, and William Peter Blattis. The Exorcist, 1971, were all released within a few years of one another, and their immense combined sales indicated to many publishers that horror was now a profitable marketing niche. Simmons, David. American Horror Fiction and Class, From Poe to Twilight. London, Palgrave Macmillan 2017. ISBN 9781137532800, p.119. 27 Pringle David, Rosemary's Baby, in Pringle, ed., Modern Fantasy, The 100 Best Novels. London. Grafton, 1988. ISBN 0246132140, p.103-5. 28 Barron, Matt, 8 November 2011. The 25 Best Stephen King Stories Archived 7 February 2019. At the Wayback Machine. Complex. Retrieved 5 February 2019. 29 Jackson, Dan, 18 February 2016. A Beginner's Guide to Stephen King Books Archived 7. February 2019 at the Wayback Machine. Thrillist. Retrieved 5 February 2019. 30 Richard Blyler, Stephen King in, Blyler, ed. Supernatural Fiction Writers, Contemporary Fantasy and Horror. New York, Thomson/Gale, 2003. ISBN 9780684312507. pp 525-540. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 31 Hillel Italy, 18 September 2003. Stephen King receives Honorary National Book Award. Ellensburg Daily Record. Archived from the original on 16 April 2021. Retrieved 12 September 2010. Stephen King, brand name writer, master of the horror story and e-book pioneer, has received an unexpected literary honor, a National Book Award for Lifetime Achievement. 32 Ka. Laerty Clive Barker in Richard Bleiler, ed. Supernatural Fiction Writers, Contemporary Fantasy and Horror. New York, Thomson/Gale, 2003. ISBN 9780684312507, pp 6170. 33 Ka. Laerty, Ramsey Campbell, in Richard Bleiler, ed. Supernatural Fiction Writers, Contemporary Fantasy and Horror. New York, Thomson/Gale, 2003. ISBN 9780684312507, pp 177188. 34 A. B. Lester, Catherine, Fall 2016. The Children's Horror Film. The Velvet Light Trap. 7822. 37 do. 10.7560/VLT 7803. S2 SID 1944686640. Archived from the original on 1 May 2019. Retrieved 1 May 2019. 35 Pierce, Laura J. Field, Andy P. 2016. The Impact of Scary TV and Film on Children's Internalizing Emotions, a Meta-Analysis. Human Communication Research. 42, 198-121. Do. 10.1111/HCRE.12069. ISSN 1468-2958. 36 Golden Proverbs. Archived from the original on 16 May 2013. Retrieved 15 December 2012. 37 Schweitzer, Darrell, Why Horror Fiction? In Windows of the Imagination. Berkeley Heights, NJ. Wildside Press, 1999. ISBN 9781880448601, p. 64, 67. 38 Elements of Aversion. Archived from the original on 28 February 2013. Retrieved 2 November 2012. 39 White, Chelsea, 9 February 2019. The Benefits of Being Scared. New Scientist. 241, 3216-8. Do. 10.1016/S0262-4079, 19, 30224-6. S2 SID 1266473118. 40 Stephanie Dimitrakopoulos, Autumn 1977. Feminism, Sex Role Exchanges, and Other Subliminal Fantasies in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Frontiers, A Journal of Women's Studies. 2, 3. University of Nebraska Press, 104113. Do. 10.2307/3346355. JSTOR 3346355. 41 Technologies of Monstrosity, PDF. Archived from the original, PDF, on 12 May 2013. Retrieved 2 November 2012. 42 Lecture Notes for Dracula. Archived from the original on 25 October 2012. Retrieved 2 November 2012. 43 Horror Stories. Dating Ghosts. Archived from the original on the 6th of January 2019. Retrieved. The 6th of January 2019. 44 Mrs. Radcliffe, on the Supernatural in Poetry, archived the 8th of January 2023 at the Wayback Machine, the New Monthly Magazine 7, 1826 14552. 45 Devendra Varma, The Gothic Flame, New York, Russell and Russell, 1966. 46 S. L. Varnado, The Idea of the Numinous in Gothic Literature in the Gothic Imagination, EDGR. Thompson, Pullman, Washington State University Press, 1974. 47 Clason, Matthias, Kjelgaard Christiansen, Jens, Johnson, John O. July 2020. Horror, Personality and Threat Simulation, a survey on the psychology of scary media. Evolutionary Behavioral Sciences. 14, 3213232, 10.1037/EPS0000152. S2 SID 149872472. 48 The Bram Stoker Awards. Horror Writers Association. Archived from the original on the 10th of March 2007. Retrieved the 13th of April 2010. 49 IHG Award recipients 1994-2006. HorrorAward.org. Archived from the original on the 22nd of April 2009. Retrieved the 30th of October 2014. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 50 IHG Award recipients 2007. HorrorAward.org. Archived from the original on the 2nd of May 2015. Retrieved the 30th of October 2014. 51 Brian Stableford, Horror, in the A to Z of Fantasy Literature, p. 204, Scarecrow Press, Plymouth. 2005. ISBN 0-8108-6829-6. 52 Brian Stableford. Non-supernatural horror stories tend to be psychological thrillers, often involving criminals of an unusually lurid stripe. The Discovery of Secondary Worlds. Some notes on the aesthetics and methodology of heterocosmic creativity, in Heterocosms. Wildside Press LLC, 2007. ISBN 0809519070, p. 200. Further reading, edit. Neil Barron, Horror Literature, A Reader's Guide. New York, Garland, 1990. ISBN 978. 0824043476. Jason Colavito, Knowing Fear, Science, Knowledge and the Development of the Horror Genre. Jefferson, N.C., McFarland, 2008. ISBN 978-0786432738. Brian Doherty, American Horror Fiction, From Brockden Brown to Stephen King. New York, Street. Martins, 1990. ISBN 978-0333461297. Erickson, Will, Hendricks, Grady, 2017. Paperbacks from Hell, The Twisted History of 70s and 80s Horror Fiction. Philadelphia, Quirk Books. ISBN 9781594749810. OCLC 1003294393. Stephen Jones and Kim Newman, eds, Horror, 100 Best Books. New York, Carroll and Graf. 1998 ISBN 0786705523. Stephen King, Don's Macabre. New York, Everest House, 1981. ISBN 978-0896960763. H. P. Lovecraft, Supernatural Horror in Literature, 1927, Rev. 1934, collected in Dagon and Other. Macabre Tales. Arkham House, 1965. David J. Scal, The Monster Show, A Cultural History of Horror. New York, Norton, 1993. ISBN 978-0859652117. Andreas Orcelli Horror and Mood archived 17 May 2021 at the Wayback Machine. American Philosophical Quarterly, 51 1, 2014, pp. 39-50. Gina Whisker, Horror Fiction, An Introduction. New York, Continuum, 2005. ISBN 978. 0826415615. External links, edit. Categories: Horror Fiction, Speculative Fiction. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF.